So much of the tantric practice seems to be focused on the male being able to gain control of the ejaculatory process and to be able to raise that energy up. And that's what a lot of the practices are about, raising this energy. What if he doesn't? What if he spends most of his life spending that energy? What are the consequences?
Well, there are some wives' tales out there, and I call them wives' tales because they simply aren't true.
Mm,
That say, if a man is losing his seed
mm.
often and regularly over the long term, it will destroy him.
Take his life away.
Yeah, destroy him spiritually,
Mm,
emotionally, and in every other way. And it certainly is true that if a man is depleting himself constantly over time, um, the quality of life is going to be less because the energy will be less. However, as soon as he begins to favor some preservation and cultivation of sexual energy, and we're not talking about cold turkey here. We're talking about if somebody is uh, having ejaculation, every day or several times a day, if it just goes to every other day or every third day or once a week, and bringing in good cultivation techniques and other elements of spiritual practice at the same time, there will be a huge transformation in terms of the energy manifestation in that person. And people sometimes ask me, well, I can't, not have an orgasm less than every week or every 2 weeks. Or for longer than that. And what I say is, that's fine. It's not black and white. So for the man who's been draining himself for many years, it's just to take that first step and just begin to do more cultivation. And what happens is with the pre-orgasmic cultivation of sexual energy is life becomes better. The sexual activity, whatever lifestyle it is, becomes actually more enjoyable. You may not have that orgasmic surge that you do in sex right away, but gradually your whole life becomes an orgasm.
Hmm.
And blissful, ecstatic bliss in everyday activity and a huge flow of creativity and love coming out, because that's what these energies will do when they're cultivated up over time.
So are we saying that teachers like Mantak Chia who are saying that when the male life force is expelled that he's becoming weaker? Are you saying that's not true?
Over time, it isn't. What is true is that the behavior that we cultivate in our life in relation to our sexuality makes all the difference. And what you've lost last week or last year really has no bearing on what you'll be doing this year and next year, because if you're cultivating your sexual energy and living a healthy lifestyle with spiritual practices, you will be mending, and you will be ending up ahead of where you were before you got into the depletions last year and the year before. I mean, the human nervous system, as we all know, has remarkable healing capabilities and many other capabilities that we haven't even begun to fully express. So I do not agree with the. I believe it's a fear tactic. I really do. That's my personal opinion.
How does this work for the female, the cultivating of this sexual energy? Is it the same?
The principle is the same of preservation and cultivation, but the expression of it in terms of sexual activity, particularly in a relationship with a partner, will be somewhat different, because it's the man who generally, not always, but generally limits the duration of the sexual act, because
Yes.
comes to a climax and then that's it. And of course, in our culture, the real He-Man is, he'll be ready to do it again in about 10 minutes, and then reach depletion again not long after that. And that's sort of been the mindset of satisfying a woman, is that the man has to give it all. And and that's okay for that kind of relationship. But what we're talking about here is somewhat different. We're talking about a man being able to gradually have more control over the release of his seed.
Mm-hmm.
And as he develops that ability, and the woman is along for that ride, so to speak, from the standpoint of what the man can accomplish within himself. And then once he does, then they really are more equal in the relationship, because he can last as long as she can. And then you get into the situation of women having the ability to have multiple orgasms with less depletion than a man, although there is some depletion, but not nearly as much as in a man. And so then you have the man, you have a sort of a reversal of the role, where the man is able to last indefinitely, and the woman will be in the position of having multiple orgasms, and that's okay for a while. But then you realize that the scale has tipped to the other side, and so then once the man has control of his orgasm, then it becomes a matter of working, enabling the woman and the man both to enjoy that relationship in front of orgasm. And maybe this is a good time to begin to talk about the holdback technique. It's at the heart of this whole dynamic.
With the holdback technique, is it as important for the woman to also go through, if you could keep in mind male, female, and jump from one to the other, so that we can get a balance of what's good for the masculine and what's good for the feminine? Because it's interesting to know whether the woman should be holding back as well in these practices.
I think in the case of the woman, as I mentioned, it's something that comes along probably more naturally. Women are naturally designed for a longer duration in the sex act, simply because their function in reproductive sex is to draw the seed from the man into the womb and to create the child. So the woman, and this really gets into the many centuries of imbalance in the relationship between men and women, because women are really the stronger partner in a sexual relationship, because they can last.
But I mean, in the cultivating of the sexual energy to take it up to that higher state of that spiritual state, the cultivation has to be there first, so the energy can rise. So when I say that, I mean,
yeah, a woman I think naturally cultivates, and this probably has to do with the more emotional, ecstatic nature of women, and the fact that they are able to nurture as a part of their role, in bearing children and all of that. But yes, it's the same principle in a woman. I think it comes in earlier, because a woman can last in a sexual situation, and even with orgasm, a woman can last, because they do not expel the same amount of pranic energy as a man. But once the man develops an ability to go beyond that in terms of time in the joining, then that's when the issue of the woman's orgasm becomes more significant, and then they can work together, the man and the woman, to then aid the woman in staying in front of orgasm. So to answer your question, I think in a woman, the cultivation is there to begin with, and it can be there through one or more orgasms, the cultivation. But then later on, as the man gets his act together, then the two can work together for both his cultivation and hers. So then you have two people working to stay together in front of both of their orgasms.
Yes, and then there's the practice too, isn't there?
That's generally not where it starts, though.
Yeah.
Where it starts is with the man, because he's the limiting factor in most sexual relationships.